I stole his promotion by seducing his boss. He leaked the tapes to our entire office. I've been holding this in for a while. It's hard to even type. Maybe it's because this whole thing is humiliating, and I feel sick and angry. I just need to get it off my chest. So here it is. My name's Kelly. Charles is my boyfriend, and I've been dating him for 2 years now. We met during our job interview, both applying for the same company. I remember sitting there, just wanting to get it over with, and then this guy sat next to me, looking just as nervous as I felt. We didn't talk much, just some small talk about how long the interview was taking and how freezing the room was. Nothing deep, just a throwaway conversation to pass the time. Luckily for us, we both got hired. I think that's when we actually started talking. I don't know how it happened, honestly. It was slow at first, just casual conversations at work and eating lunch together when it was convenient. Then one day, he asked if I wanted to grab dinner after work. I said yes. It wasn't even a date, or at least I didn't think it was. But we kept hanging out after that. More dinners, movie nights, staying late at work together. At some point, it turned into more than just hanging out. I don't even remember when we started dating officially. It was one of those things where you just sort of slip into it without a big moment. Like one day, we were just coworkers who were close. Then we were best friends, then we were sleeping together, and then we were a couple. No dramatic love confession, no official, will you be my girlfriend conversation. It just happened. A year in, we decided to move in together. It wasn't even a big discussion. We were already spending most of our nights together, so it made sense. I had my place, he had his, but we were barely there. One day we were at my apartment and he was just like, why don't we just get a place together? And I was like, yeah, why not? That was it. That was the whole conversation. Now here's the thing. Nobody at work knows we're together. Or well, they suspect it, but nobody has any actual proof. That's because I made sure of it. It's not that we're not allowed to date. There's nothing in the company rules that says we can't. But I just didn't want to deal with it. I don't know why. Maybe I was scared of people treating me differently. Maybe I just liked keeping that part of my life separate. Or maybe I just didn't want to give people something to talk about. Whatever the reason, I was the one who insisted we keep it quiet. Josh didn't really care either way, so he just went along with it. It wasn't even that hard to pull off. People already saw us as close friends, so it wasn't weird that we were always together. If anyone asked, we just shrugged and said we were best friends. We were careful. We never acted like a couple at work. No touching, no sneaky looks, no inside jokes that could give us away. We made sure to never arrive at work together unless we absolutely had to. Even when we left, we made sure not to walk out at the same time. It helped that we were both naturally private people. We didn't have any work friends who were close enough to start digging into our personal lives. So yeah, our secret was safe. Charles knows how competitive I am. I think that's one of the things he admires most about me. He's mentioned it before, how much he likes the way I push myself, how I always want more. He used to say it was sweet, the way I couldn't just sit still and be satisfied. I don't know if sweet is the right word, but I liked hearing it. At work, people see us both as go-getters, the ones who stay late, take on extra projects, and never just do the bare minimum. But I think Charles doesn't give himself enough credit. He acts like I'm the one always pushing forward, but he's the same way. Maybe he just doesn't want to admit it, or maybe he likes seeing me in the spotlight more than he likes standing in it himself. Either way, I love when he talks me up. It makes me feel good about myself, and I always try to remind him that he's the same. I think that's why we work so well together. One day out of the blue, he asked me why I wanted to keep our relationship private. It caught me off guard because I didn't really have an answer. I just knew I wanted it that way. No reason, no deep explanation. I just liked the idea of keeping it to ourselves. That way there was no office gossip, no jokes, no one looking at us differently. I think I didn't want the extra attention, and I liked knowing that no one else was involved in what we had. He didn't push me for an answer. He just nodded, like he was trying to understand. I think he already knew I wasn't going to give him a real reason. If I had one, I would have told him from the start, and he must have been fine with it because he agreed to it in the first place. He just wanted to hear my thoughts out loud. Anytime we were home, we talked about everything. There was never really a moment of silence between us unless we were just too exhausted to keep our eyes open. We talked about the future a lot, how much we loved each other, how we were going to get married someday and how we'd probably buy a house, maybe even move to a different city if a better job opportunity came up. It was never just random talk either. It always felt real, like something we both believed would happen. I don't know when exactly I became the type of person who could sit around and talk about marriage like it was normal, but with Charles, it felt easy. It didn't scare me. It didn't feel like something I needed to run from. We also talked about work a lot. The good parts, the annoying parts, and the things people did that made no sense. It was always nice because we both knew all the same people, so it wasn't like explaining things to an outsider who had no clue who was who. When I told him something funny that happened in the office, he knew exactly which coworker I was talking about. When he complained about someone messing up a project, I already understood how frustrating it was without him having to explain. It made everything easier. One of the things we talked about sometimes was the head of his department. He liked me. I forgot to mention, Charles and I worked in different departments, and both of our departments mostly collaborated on various projects, so it was almost like one department, but it wasn't. So yeah, his boss liked me, but not in a weird or uncomfortable way, just in a way where it was obvious he thought highly of me. He always complimented my work, always made sure I knew I was doing well. He had never been rude to me, never given me a hard time, never treated me the way he treated some of the others. Maybe I was just lucky, or maybe I was actually one of his favorites. I didn't think much about it. I saw it as nothing more than him being nice. He never crossed any lines, and he never acted like there was anything more to it than professional respect. If anything, I figured he just appreciated how good I was at my job. Charles was good too, though. Sometimes I thought he didn't get enough credit for it. He worked just as hard as I did, but maybe because I was more outspoken, I got noticed more. My coworkers made silly remarks about it sometimes. They joked about how Charlie's boss was extra nice to me, how he always seemed to be on my side. I never really responded to those comments. I ignored them. It wasn't worth paying attention to because, at the end of the day, none of them knew anything real about me. The only thing that was actually important and real to me was me and Charles, and no one even knew about us. I think people liked me naturally. I never had to try too hard. I was pretty, and I was easy to get along with. People admired me, and I heard all the time how much they liked my personality. I wasn't the type of person people had a hard time warming up to. That's why I never really took the whole favorite thing too seriously when it came to his boss. People just liked me. That was normal. It didn't mean anything more than that. I won't lie, though. I liked the attention. I wasn't the type to shy away from it. It felt nice when people noticed me, when they saw my hard work and appreciated it, but I never looked at it as something to take advantage of. My focus was always on working hard, moving up, and making sure I was doing better than I was the day before. That was the only thing that held significance for me. One day, our bosses made an announcement about a promotion window opening up, and both Charles and I were up for it. This wasn't just any promotion, it was a huge opportunity, the kind that could change everything, the kind we had both been working toward for years. It wasn't a surprise that we were both being considered. Anytime something big like this came up, it was always between the two of us. People in the office knew it too. It was obvious. We worked the hardest, stayed the latest, and always pushed ourselves to do more. If there was anyone in that company who deserved it, it was going to be one of us. When the news was announced, we were both excited. It was one of those moments where everything felt like it was falling into place, like all the extra hours, all the effort, all the times we went above and beyond. It was all finally paying off. I remember how happy Charles was. He wanted to celebrate right away. That was one of the things I loved about him. He always celebrated the little things. Even the moments that didn't seem like a big deal to other people, he made sure we acknowledged them. That night, he planned a celebratory dinner. It wasn't anything fancy, just something nice for the two of us. He wanted to take a moment to appreciate where we were, to remind ourselves how lucky we were to be in this position. I liked that about him. He never let moments like this go unnoticed. At dinner, we talked about how crazy it was that we had both made it this far. We joked about how everyone at the office probably saw this coming from a mile away. It was funny because no one even knew we were dating, but somehow, it was always us two competing for the top spot. We made a toast to the best employee winning. Charles laughed and told me not to go easy on him just because he was my boyfriend. He said it like it was a joke, but I could tell he meant it. He wanted to make sure this was fair. He wanted to know that if I won, it was because I earned it, and if he won, it was because he deserved it. I told him I wouldn't go easy on him. I promised I would give it my all, and I guess I took it too far. As the promotion process continued, both of us gave it our all. We had always worked hard, but this time, there was an extra push. We were both putting in more effort than usual and making sure everything was perfect. But the truth was, as much as I wanted this, I knew Charles was the better candidate. It wasn't about who worked harder. We both did. But he had more experience in certain areas. The projects that directly tied into this promotion, he was better at them. His performance reviews were strong. His past work made him a clear frontrunner. When I looked at things objectively, I could see it. If I were someone else, someone on the outside looking in, I would probably say the same thing, that Charles deserved it, that he was the natural choice. And while I was happy for him, really I also wanted to win. The office environment made it worse. It was competitive. Everyone talked about promotions like they were battles, and someone had to fight for the top. And there were always rumors. Some people whispered about how these decisions were made, and how promotions didn't always go to the most deserving, but to whoever had the right connections. I never paid much attention to those things before. I had never lost before, so I never had to. But this time, the whispers got to me. Then, people started saying it was already decided, that Charles was getting the promotion, that someone overheard it. I didn't know if it was true, but hearing it over and over again did something to me. It made it harder to focus. It made it feel like I was just waiting for something inevitable, like I was putting in all this effort for nothing. Charles told me not to listen. He told me to keep going, to do my best, and that nothing was final yet. And I tried to believe him. I really did. I told myself to block out the noise, to keep pushing forward, but I couldn't shake the feeling. I started thinking about how it would look if he won. People already saw me as one of the favorites in both departments, in the company as well. If I didn't get the promotion, if my so-called status didn't amount to anything in the end, what would that say about me? Would people think I wasn't as good as they thought I was? Would they stop seeing me as competition? And then there was the other part, the part I didn't even want to admit to myself, the part that hated the idea of losing, no matter how much I loved him. Charles was my boyfriend. If he won, it was a win for both of us. That's what I told myself. That's what I wanted to believe, given our relationship. But I also wanted to be the one who got it. That was the downside of my competitive nature, wanting to be happy for him, but also wanting to be the one standing in that position. It messed with me in a way I didn't expect. The idea of Charles getting it over me started creeping into my mind more and more. It was something I couldn't stop thinking about. It didn't matter how much I told myself that everything was fine, that I should be proud of him if he won. The thought still sat there, growing, making me more restless by the day. There were many ways I could have handled things, but I went with the one that felt the easiest, and the one that guaranteed my win. I didn't make the decision right away. At first, it was just a thought, something that crossed my mind but didn't stick. I told myself I wasn't that kind of person, that I didn't need to go down that path and that I could win on my own. But then the doubts crept in, the insecurities, the rumors in the office, and the fact that Charles was the one everyone expected to win. I started looking at my advantages differently. Like I mentioned earlier, I had always known I was well-liked. People admired me, and his boss, who had more hands in this promotion, was no exception. Since there was no sign of anything appropriate, I had ignored it before, never let myself think too much about it. But now, I saw it for what it was. An opportunity. I debated it at first, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Why should I let this promotion slip away when I had the means to get it? Why should I sit back and let Charles win when I had another way? It wasn't just about wanting to win. It was about proving something to myself, proving that I could do whatever it took to get ahead. So I started testing the waters. I changed the way I acted around his boss, added small things here and there and lingering looks, subtle touches, and a softness in my voice that hadn't been there before. I made sure to be alone with him more often, to give him more of my attention, and it didn't take long to see that I was right. He had a thing for me. Things escalated naturally after that. It started as flirting, playful and innocent on the surface, but with an undertone that couldn't be ignored. I knew what I was doing, and I could tell he knew too. It was a game, and we were both playing. At the same time, I had to make sure Charles didn't suspect anything. He started noticing changes in me, started asking if something was wrong. He could tell I was acting differently, and that something was off. I made up excuses, covered my tracks, and reassured him that everything was fine. Thankfully, he believed me. He trusted me too much to think otherwise. I became closer to his boss, spending more time with him, making sure that every interaction pushed things in the direction I wanted. Charles asked me about it once or twice, casually bringing up how his boss seemed to be more into me now, and I brushed it off, told him it was nothing, told him that things have always been that way, and that it didn't mean anything. As long as his boss wasn't bothering me, he accepted my answer and never questioned it further. It was easy for him not to press on because it was something we always talked about, except it was more serious now, and I guess that's why he had to make sure it was still the way it was, and nothing more. I appreciated his concerns and care about his girlfriend, but then, that didn't mean I won't see my plans to the end. The night it first happened, I planned everything carefully. I told Charles that my head of department asked me to stay back and help him work on a project with his boss. Luckily for me, during that time, my boss wasn't doing too well, so I was mostly the one overseeing things in my department, so that was unquestionable. So I made sure my excuse was solid, made sure he had no reason to doubt me. He didn't. He told me to be safe, that he would see me at home, and once he left, I went to his boss's office. By then, it wasn't even a question of if it would happen. It was inevitable. We both knew where things were heading. Once the office was empty, once it was just the two of us, it happened. And that was how I secured my promotion. It didn't end there. One time wasn't enough. The promotion wasn't official yet, and his boss made it clear what he expected from me. He wasn't giving me the promotion just because he liked me. He wanted something in return. So I kept making excuses, kept finding ways to stay behind or meet up with him somewhere, and kept doing what needed to be done until everything was finalized, which was sleeping with him. Charles never suspected anything. He couldn't. He had no reason to. He couldn't question why I was always staying behind, why I was always being given extra tasks. He couldn't ask his boss or mine why I was the one being called for certain things. He had no power in that situation, and I knew that. I didn't think about what it meant beyond that. I didn't let myself. My focus at that point was that I was getting what I wanted. The promotion was official. After everything, after the planning, after the risks, after the decisions I had made, I had won. The moment my name was announced, I felt it. Victory, satisfaction, the rush of knowing that all my efforts had paid off. I had secured my place, proved that I was more than capable, and cemented my position as someone who could do whatever it took to succeed. This was what I had wanted, what I had fought for, and now it was mine. Charles congratulated me, but something was off. His words were there, but empty of emotions. He didn't seem as excited as he should have been, and didn't celebrate the way I expected him to. He was reserved and quiet in a way that didn't match the moment. Normally, he would have been the one planning something, and making sure that even the smallest win was acknowledged, and reminding me that success should be celebrated. But this time, there was none of that. At first, I thought maybe he was just upset about losing. It made sense. It doesn't matter who we are to each other. Losing doesn't feel good, especially when he had been the one everyone expected to win. He had worked hard, done everything right, and yet, in the end, I was the one who had been chosen. It had to sting. I understood that. He was competitive, just like me, and I could imagine how it must have felt for him to watch the promotion slip through his fingers. Still, I expected him to push past it. I thought that once he had time to process everything, he would snap out of it, but he didn't. When I brought up celebrating, he didn't seem interested. He dismissed the idea entirely, making excuses and saying he wasn't in the mood. That was when I became utterly frustrated. I felt like it wasn't just disappointment on his part, because me winning can't make him this way. So I thought maybe it was something more, something heavier. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe he just needed time. Maybe he was tired. Or maybe I was right and the loss had affected him more than I realized. But no matter how many explanations I tried to come up with, none of them felt right because that wasn't like him. This wasn't how he reacted to things. Even in moments where he had faced setbacks before, he had always found a way to support me, to be happy for me. But this time, he wasn't. That was when I exploded with anger. I had done what I needed to do to win. I had worked hard, positioned myself in the right place, taken advantage of my strengths, and used what I had to get what I wanted. The result was the same. I was promoted because I had fought for it, because I had played the game better than anyone else. And yet, instead of standing beside me, instead of recognizing my efforts, Charles was pulling away. That was so annoying. His distance hurted me badly. After everything, after all the talks about supporting each other, about understanding the importance of ambition, he was now the one acting like my success wasn't deserved. It was as if, in his mind, there was something wrong with me winning because his reactions just made me feel like because I had found a way to come out on top, it somehow meant that my achievements weren't valid. I couldn't really figure out why he was acting that way, but I knew there was something more beneath it. Because of the way he looked at me, the way his energy had shifted, and the way he hesitated before speaking, it all pointed to something deeper. But I didn't want to acknowledge it. I didn't want to sit with the discomfort, to pick apart the silence between us, or to question the way things felt different. Instead, I focused on what was in front of me. I had the promotion, I had the position, I had won. That was extremely important for me, and I saw him as being jealous and a loser for sulking over a promotion that his girlfriend won. He should have been my biggest supporter, but he wasn't. So I told him that if he couldn't handle that, if he couldn't bring himself to be happy for me, then that was his issue to deal with. That night, there was love between us. There was no excitement, no shared joy. There was only thick and heavy silence between us. I couldn't believe that a mere promotion made us this way. It felt like we weren't on the same side, and we went to bed like strangers. The next day was supposed to be a celebration. The company had planned a dinner in honor of my promotion, and I woke up feeling victorious. After everything, I had the position I had worked so hard for. The recognition, the status, the proof that I had succeeded, and it was all meant to be mine. This was supposed to be the moment where I could enjoy the rewards of my efforts and finally bask in what I had accomplished. But that was the day I lost everything. When I walked into the office, something felt off. People were staring, whispering, and exchanging glances that they didn't bother to hide. It wasn't the usual kind of attention, not admiration or curiosity, but something else, but I couldn't really pinpoint what it was then. So I tried to brush it off and convinced myself that maybe it was just because of my promotion, that people were just reacting to the news in their own way. But then, a coworker pulled me aside. There was no hesitation, no attempt to soften the blow. She simply handed me her phone and told me to look, and that was when my world collapsed. The video played on the screen, clear as day, undeniable in what it showed. Me and Charlie's boss, private moments that were never meant to be seen. Our interaction and touch was exposed for everyone to witness. The humiliation, the horror, and the sheer disbelief that this was actually happening. It all hit me like a rock. The tapes had been leaked, not just to a few people, not just to a select group, but to the entire office. HR had already seen them. Every coworker, every superior, every person I worked with now had access to the most shameful parts of my life. I couldn't believe it. My mind was struggling to process what was happening. I could hear people around me, the murmurs, the quiet snickers, the judgment in their eyes. It didn't take long for the realization to set in that this wasn't just some random leak. Someone had done this on purpose. Someone had made sure that everyone would see. But I didn't know exactly who it was. First, I needed to go find my boyfriend and apologize. Hopefully he hasn't watched the video yet. So I took Charles away to a private room to apologize, but before I could say a word, the look on his face told me everything. So I asked if he had already known, and he said he just didn't want to watch it alone and that everyone deserved to know. And that was how I knew he was the one who leaked the video. I asked him why, and if he never really loved me, He didn't try to explain himself or offer any justifications. He just smirked, like this was some kind of joke. And he told me I shouldn't be ashamed of how I had worked hard to get my promotion, that at the very least, the company had the right to know how I had earned it. His words hit like a slap, but beneath the anger, there was panic. I was so mad because he knew this could ruin me, but he still went ahead with it. I couldn't believe him. It was no longer just about what had happened between me and his boss. It was about perception, about how people would see me from now on. I was so mad at him and I started shouting, but he just walked out of me. The promotion that had once felt like my greatest achievement was now tainted, reduced to nothing more than a scandal. All my effort and every bit of work I had put in was erased by this ugly revelation. I was furious, but there was no time to process the emotions fully. I needed to leave. I needed to get out before the humiliation became too much to bear. I grabbed my things and walked out of the office that day. My head was spinning with everything that had just happened. It was too much. I could barely breathe. When I reached home, I was met with another shock. My things were already outside. The sight of them, scattered on the ground, felt surreal, like proof that everything was falling apart faster than I could stop it. I tried calling Charles, desperate for an explanation, for anything that would make this make sense, but he wasn't answering, so I waited. I sat outside watching the door, waiting for him to come home. And when he finally arrived, I begged him. I pleaded for him to reconsider, to talk to me, to give me a chance to explain. But he didn't listen. He didn't care. He had already made his decision. He said he was so super grateful that I had asked to keep our relationship a secret because he couldn't be attached to someone like me, although now he knows why I wanted it that way, so I can go messing around the company. But truly, that was not why, and there was no way to convince him otherwise. And just like that, we were done. With nowhere else to go, I found somewhere temporary to stay. A place to manage for now while I figured things out. But no matter where I went, the shame followed me. Returning to work. The next day was so hard. The office that was once the place where I had thrived was now a battlefield where I was struggling to survive. People mocked me in their own ways, some subtle, some cruel. HR got involved, and suddenly Charles' boss started distancing himself and trying to protect himself from the fallout, and was making sure that if consequences were coming, they would fall on me alone. I could feel my position being taken away from me. People are now treating me differently, and the way opportunities that had once been mine were now being handed to someone else. I was no longer valuable here. I was a stain on the company's image, and a problem that they needed to erase. And that's when I started to realize that I might actually lose everything I have worked so hard for. So I took days off, hoping that it might help, but it didn't change anything. The shame didn't fade, and the humiliation didn't disappear. If anything, it was worse. My mental health started deteriorating, especially as I was anticipating what the company decided, and no matter how hard I tried to ignore it, everything remained the same. If only I didn't do things the way I did to win the promotion, all of these wouldn't have happened. Update. So I guess this is the final update. Everything has officially fallen apart and there's nothing I can do about it. Till now, I still don't know how Charles got that video. But after the video leaked, things spiraled fast. HR got involved immediately, and once they realized the extent of the damage, they had to do something to control the situation. The company didn't want a full-blown scandal, so they did what companies always do in these situations. They found a way to sweep it under the rug while making it look like they handled it. The first thing they did was fire Charlie's boss. I saw it coming the moment he started keeping himself from me and acting like he barely knew me, like we hadn't just spent months sneaking around together. He never defended me, never tried to take any of the heat. The moment things got bad, he threw me under the bus and saved himself as much as he could. Not that it worked, because in the end, they still got rid of him. He was a liability, and they couldn't afford to keep him, not after the way things had blown up. Then they turned their attention to me. They placed me under investigation, which was their way of dragging things out while they figured out what to do with me. I knew from the start how it was going to end. There was no version of this where I kept my job. The company wasn't going to openly fire me and risk a legal mess, but they also weren't going to let me stay. So after some time, they quietly let me go. No big announcement, No public firing, just a polite conversation about how it was best for everyone if I moved on, as if I had a choice. And in the end, I didn't even get to keep the promotion I fought so hard for. The position was taken from me. The second HR got involved. All that effort and all the things I did to secure it, and it was ripped away just like that. The irony, Charles didn't get it either. After everything, after all of this mess, he still didn't get what he wanted, although he pretends like that's not what he wanted. But he got to keep his job, sure, but that was it. No promotion, no reward, nothing. Just a front row seat to my downfall. And honestly, that makes me hate him even more. I lost everything. My job, my reputation, my relationship, my future. I lost all of it. And he gets to sit there working the same job, pretending like none of this ever happened. And yeah, I get it. I messed up. I made bad choices. I did things I shouldn't have done. But that doesn't change the fact that I hate him for how he handled it. We were dating. We were supposed to be a team. No matter what, I never would have done this to him. I would have never humiliated him like this, never destroyed his career, never ruined his life just because I was mad. But he had no problem doing it to me. No hesitation, no second thoughts, just pure, calculated revenge. And the worst part is that he doesn't even feel bad about it. I have no idea what to do next. I'm broken, sad, and lost, and I don't have a plan. I don't even know where to start rebuilding from this. All I know is that I lost, and he won in the only way that mattered to him. I hope he's happy, because I'll never forgive him for this.